Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie. In this video, I'm going to look at the first week of 2024. That's a week that runs from Monday, January the 1st, 2024, through to Sunday, January the 7th, 2024. So the way I'm going to structure this video is as follows. I'm going to start by looking at the main astrological events of the week, or rather the main astrological events as I see them. These are the events that I believe to be the main astrological events. Having done that, I'm going to look at how these events might impact a few famous people. One of those famous people is Justin Trudeau, so I will be having a quick look at his horoscope. So, having done that, I'm going to look at the I Ching for the week. So the way I do that is I ask a question, which is, what is the week going to be like for people watching this video, and I throw the I Ching coins and come up with the hexagrams. Now, I must emphasize that if you don't want me to look at your future, look at your week from a perspective of the I Ching, when you come to that part of the video where I look at the I Ching, you don't have to watch it anymore. You can stop watching, you can watch something else, because it's so important when you do divination, when someone becomes part of the divinatory process, that it is voluntary. You don't want to suddenly find that someone is talking about your future, even if it's on quite a trivial level, if that's what you didn't want. So just bear that in mind when you come to the section of a video relating to the I Ching. You don't have to watch it if you don't want to, and if you don't watch it, you are not part of the forecast. The forecast only covers people who watch the forecast. If you don't watch the forecast, that forecast does not apply to you. Okay, so let's move on to the astrology for today. So let's move to the chart. There is Justin Trudeau. I know he's quite a controversial figure, but I will come on to him very soon. So what you have here is the positions of the planets on January the 1st, 2024 at midnight, the moment 2023 transitions to 2024 in New York. When all those crowds are getting excited about the new year, counting the new year in, or whatever else they might do. So that's a snapshot of the positions of the planets. In some respects, you could regard this chart as the chart for 2024, set for New York. But because it's midnight, wherever you are in the world, the chart is always going to be fairly similar. For example, it's because it's midnight, the sun is always going to be at the bottom of the chart. It's always going to be conjunct the IC, but some of the planets will be slightly different. But by and large, it does give us perhaps a flavour of the year ahead. And one thing to point out, and this is really the first astrological event of the year, is Venus square Saturn. Now, Venus square Saturn is not a good aspect. Now, it's not dreadful because Venus is strong. Venus is in mutual reception to Jupiter, and it will stay in mutual reception to Jupiter for most of January. Now, what I mean by mutual reception is that Venus is in Sagittarius, which is a sign ruled by Jupiter, and Jupiter is in Taurus, a sign ruled by Venus. So what that means is Venus and Jupiter are in mutual reception, and that gives Venus a lot of dignity. So that square between Venus and Saturn is certainly mitigated. Nonetheless, we do need to consider what that Venus square Saturn actually means, because in some respects, because it's the first big astrological event of the year, it may be a signature of 2024, and it may be a signature of the week. So if you kind of regard the week as a fractal of the whole year. So, Venus is obviously the planet of relationships. It's square Saturn. Relationships may not be great, at least in the short term, because Venus wants to relate, but it runs into Saturn. So people might find it difficult to let go. That might be a feature of Monday with Venus square Saturn. So it may be difficult to get really close to people, perhaps because there might actually be too much emotion because Saturn is in Pisces. Pisces is a water sign. So people might be, I don't know, they might be holding on to their feelings, not really prepared to let the other person see their real feelings. So, it's a lot of brooding there. But there may be another way of looking at Venus square Saturn. Venus is not just about it's not just about love. It's not just about relationships. It is about money. It is perhaps about the value of things. With Venus square Saturn, there could be a certain meanness there. Simply because it's happening on the first day of a week. The week starts with Venus square Saturn. The month starts with Venus square Saturn. And the year starts with Venus square Saturn. I think that people may be inclined to put a price tag on just about everything. Maybe this is a response to the economic situation that we're in. A price tag on everything. The Venus square Saturn is sometimes actually connected with prostitution. Now, I don't mean that necessarily in a literal sense, but it's sort of with prostitution is putting a price tag kind of on relating. But normal human interactions could be something that people charge money for. Again, I'm not saying necessarily literally, but I think that over the year you might find that there are people who appear to be friendly and appear to be supportive, but actually they want something in return. Now, I understand that human relations are very often transactional, much more transactional than we actually realize, and that's just a sign of the human condition. But I think that the transactional nature of relationships is going to be particularly strong this week. It's going to be particularly strong this month. I think it's going to be particularly strong this year. And it's going to be particularly strong on Monday. So Monday might be a microcosm for the whole year. So that is something that we need to consider. So as we move into the week, depending on where you are, whether you're in the Americas or whether you're in Europe, Australia, Asia, Mercury goes stationary direct. So to be precise, Mercury goes stationary direct at 3:09 a.m. in London on Tuesday. New York, that would actually be at the end of Monday. So Monday or Tuesday, depending on where you are, Mercury goes stationary direct. This is an important event, and I think it's a good event. For the last 3 weeks, Mercury has been going retrograde. So with Mercury retrograde, it's possible that plans have been put on hold. Organization may have been, difficult because people had last minute changes of mind. So whatever we tried to organize, it just hasn't fully worked out. And communications could have got scrambled, which hasn't made things any easier. So Mercury goes direct at the beginning of a week, and that's certainly good news. And it comes at a time when, on I think New Year's Eve, the last weekend of the year, Jupiter went stationary direct. So we've got Jupiter going stationary direct and Mercury going stationary direct at the same time. And so many of us are going to feel that, this is a time when, things are really starting to move after weeks, perhaps even months of delay. We can finally get the show on the road. Then on the 3rd, which is a Wednesday, we get a semi-sextile between Mars and Pluto. So there's Mars at 27, on the beginning of the week was at 27 Sagittarius. There's Pluto, 29, 22 Capricorn. So Mars on Wednesday is exactly 30 degrees from Pluto. So Mars in Sagittarius, 30 degrees from Pluto in Capricorn. The semi-sextile is often listed as a good aspect. I don't know why. The semi-sextile is not a good aspect. Reason being because the two signs are next to each other, and signs that are next to each other tend to have a very different nature. Mars in Sagittarius, Pluto in Capricorn. Sagittarius and Capricorn are very different signs. Sagittarius is sort of optimistic, it's fiery, it's positive. Capricorn can be downbeat, it's earthy, and it's, of course, negative. So they don't fully relate to each other. So you've got sort of Mars in Sagittarius, you've got all the optimism of Mars, wanting to, expand its horizons, and then it has to clash with the intensity of Pluto. So, midweek, many of us there are things we're going to want to do, but we can't really see it through because something's holding us back. It might just all seem too much. We might be worried about the consequences. We might be keen to get things going, but other people might start to raise these fears. Well, if you do that, you never know what's going to happen. So that's one possibility of Mars semi-sextile Pluto. It's also possible that some people are going to be really into power. They're going to be really struggling to find a way to assert themselves, and they're going to be kind of a bit confused about it. How do you assert your power? On one hand, you want to be overt about it. You want to say, do this, do that, all that kind of stuff. But on the other hand, you're thinking, well, maybe you need to be a bit more subtle about it. So it's going to be hard work if you're the kind of person that likes to go on power trips with Mars semi-sextile Pluto. Then on Thursday, Mars moves into Capricorn. I think that is quite a big deal. Mars is exalted. Firstly, Mars is exalted in Capricorn. I mean, Mars works extremely well in Capricorn. Secondly, Capricorn is a cardinal sign. 0 degrees Capricorn. It's a solstice point. Or, you can see Capricorn Cancer as kind of like the solstice axis. And so Mars is conjunct 0 degrees Capricorn. It's square 0 degrees Aries. So Mars is hitting the Aries point. Aries, the Aries point is like the world at large, how we occur to the world, how the world occurs to us. And so with Mars hitting the Aries point, it's a time, if you look around, there's going to be a great need to assert. Governments are going to want to assert. We're going to want to assert. We're going to see people trying to assert themselves all over the place with Mars moving into Capricorn. That is by virtue of the fact that it's square the Aries point, Mars hitting the Aries point. Not specifically because it's Capricorn. But as far as Mars in Capricorn is concerned, it's a time when we can assert ourselves effectively. So if there's something you've been waiting to do, you really wanted to get things done, get people to take you seriously. The last few weeks it may have been really difficult. Not so long ago, Mars was square Neptune. Mars square Neptune can be really difficult. You try to get things done, but you get distracted. You might put your energy into the wrong areas. You might put your energy into dangerous areas. Remembering that Mars square Neptune often connected with sleaze, crime, that kind of thing. But now Mars is moving into Capricorn. It's over. All that Mars square Neptune chaos, that's gone. Mars in Capricorn, sensible Capricorn, Mars exalted in Capricorn. It's really a time when we can assert ourselves effectively. It's not over dramatic. We have a clear set of goals, which we can certainly achieve. And really, that's it. I mean, those are the main things going on this week, and I would really distill it down to three aspects, or rather 3 events. Monday, Venus square Saturn. Monday, Tuesday, Mercury going stationary direct, and Thursday, Mars moving into Capricorn. I should say that Thursday, Friday, Saturday, the precise timing depends on exactly where you are, but roughly Thursday, Friday, Saturday, the moon is going through late Libra, early Scorpio. In other words, it's going through the Via Combusta. The Via Combusta is the flaming path, that makes sense, doesn't it? Via, road, Combusta, to do with flames, fire, whatever. Now, the moon has moved through the Via Combusta every single month, so it's not actually a particularly big deal. But, when the moon is going through the Via Combusta, particularly the Scorpio part of the Via Combusta, between 0 Scorpio and 15 Scorpio, things can happen that we just weren't planning on. We think it's going to work out like this, and it actually works out like that. For example, God, years ago, I mean, I'm not a particularly good driver, but years ago, I took my driving test, and I asked a horary question: will I pass my driving test? And the moon was in the Via Combusta. So you'd think, okay, does that, you'd think it's a simple question. Are you going to pass? Are you going to fail? What happened was, I went for the final driving lesson. In England, you take your driving test in a driving instructor's car, and I said I was going to have a final lesson before my test, and I was driving down this road, and I was going too fast. The driving instructor told me to slow down, and I slammed the brakes on, and somebody went into the back of me. So we had this accident before my driving test. It was, the car was still going, but we got, we actually went back to the driving instructor's home, and he was in a daze. Then I said to him, "Oh, well, what about my driving test?" And he'd forgotten that I had to take a driving test. And so he thought, "Okay, well, we'll give it a go." So we went to the test center, and there was a can of Coca-Cola, to keep the body of the car, the instructor's car, off the tire. And anyway, I was completely in a state of shock. I just had I had this accident, and I've been thinking too much before I'm a Gemini. I was thinking too much in this lesson, but this accident put me in a daze. And because I wasn't thinking too much, I sort of took the lesson in a complete daze, and I managed to pass it. I took the test in a daze. I managed to pass it. Now that kind of indicates how the moon in the Via Combusta Hori. Okay, it wasn't that I took the test when the moon was in the Via Combusta, but when I did asked the Hori question before the test, the moon was in the Via Combusta. And so the moon in Via Combusta was suggesting, but it wasn't saying I was going to fail the test. It was saying that something weird was going to happen. And in a way, in that sense, something weird happened, but in a strange way, allowed me to pass the test, because before I had the accident, I was not in the right state of mind to pass the test, because I was thinking too much. But then the accident stopped me thinking. Sorry, I've gone on far too much about that. But that gives you a flavour of how the Via Combusta, can work. Okay, so what I want to do now is I just want to look at a few famous people who may be influenced by what's going on today. I'm not saying that the events I'm talking about are going to turn up in the news, because even if you're famous, if you have an event, something going on in your life, that doesn't mean to say that the whole world is immediately going to find out about it. So let's start with Mercury going direct. So if you see Mercury going direct, or any planet going going stationary. As I've used this analogy before, it was an analogy that Stephen Arroyo, I think, used. He was an astrologer. I read his books in the 1980s, but I think it was Stephen Arroyo who said that when a stationary planet is like a candle flame. Well, it's like a finger and a candle flame. He says that you can put your finger back and forth through a candle flame and it doesn't hurt. But when a planet is stationary, it's like your finger has stationed in the candle flame. So obviously, if your finger stations in a candle flame, it really hurts, doesn't it? So when Mercury stations, it can. You should always look what it hits in your chart, because that thing in your chart is like the finger in the candle flame. It's going to really magnify it. So you really look what is happening with this Mercury with this Mercury stationing. Now, before I talk about to one person, one organization who I believe this Mercury station hits, I should just say, what midpoints does Mercury station on Monday, Tuesday? It stations on the Sun Admetos midpoint. Admetos is a hypothetical planet, can be connected with delay, can be connected with things sort of ossifying. Moon Neptune and Sun Saturn. So I think and the Sun Saturn midpoint is often connected with separations, saying goodbye. And so maybe, with Moon Neptune is about, of course, about confusion. So, in terms of what's going on with Mercury hitting those midpoints, Mercury hitting the Sun Admetos midpoint, there might be a feeling of sort of dissatisfaction. We know perhaps that something's over, because the Admetos was a god, was a mythological king in ancient Greece who tried to postpone his own death. So that's maybe Mercury on the sun Admetos midpoint, maybe about holding on to something in our minds, a set of ideas that we're holding on to. Then Mercury moves on to the sort of Moon Neptune midpoint. There's the sort of uncertainty and the chaos. I don't say chaos, but we're holding on to something in a way that we don't understand. Why are we doing it? Then finally, Mercury on the Sun Saturn is perhaps the acceptance that something is finished, and there may be a sense of farewells. So that's just a possibility with Mercury going stationary direct. Although I must emphasize that it's a good thing. It's going to make things easier for us, Mercury going stationary direct. But just that exact point could be a bit problematic. Now, one person who may be affected by this is the singer Taylor Swift. I know nothing about her. I don't find her interesting, etc., etc. But I've just noticed I've got that it does hit her chart. Maybe you're interested in her. But Mercury goes stationary direct, I believe, at around 22 degrees 11 minutes Sagittarius. And so you can see, I don't have her precise time of birth, but I've just taken her noon chart, December the 13th, 1989 in Reading, Pennsylvania. So at noon, her sun is at 2140 Sagittarius. So Mercury is stationing on her sun. That sun is highly emphasized. Whatever that means in her chart, it is highly it's highly emphasized. If I were to be advising her, I suppose it is about some kind of communication, perhaps. It could be about perhaps some project that has been on hold, but now it can be put into action. I'm not really going to speculate. I'm just looking, because I don't really find her particularly interesting, but I'm just saying, if you were doing her chart, if you found her interesting, then you might consider the impact of Mercury stationing conjunct her sun. So as far as the organization that Mercury stationing might influence, then it's Hamas. Now, Hamas, of course, has been in the news a lot since its invasion of Israel on October the 7th. I spent some time trying to work out what Hamas's horoscope was, and they did have a meeting in 1987, and I came to the conclusion that it seemed to be December the 14th, 1987, was when they came into being. There are other dates, a day or two either side of this, but I think it seems to be that December 1987 was when Hamas came into being. And so you can see in this case that Hamas has a Sun Saturn conjunction. I think Hamas really is a Sagittarian organization. Their famous or infamous slogan, "From a river to the sea," the whole expansion, Hamas want to take over Israel, the whole lot. That's quite a Sagittarian thing. Perhaps the dark side of Sagittarian, unless you're a Hamas supporter. But I don't know. and there's that Sun-Saturn conjunction. We're dealing here, I believe, in terms of Sagittarius, we're dealing with the ideological aspect of Sagittarius. Remember, Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter. Sagittarius can be a very opinionated sign. Sagittarians often have very strong views about right and wrong, and they're often not prepared to compromise this. It's obvious to them. So yeah, Sagittarius might be a mutable sign, changeable. Not changeable, but flexible. But it can also, one must never forget that Jupiter rules Sagittarius. So Mercury stations on Hamas's Sun-Saturn conjunction. I think. I think it means it certainly means something. It might say something about their leadership, because the sun in a chart like this, the sun in a chart of an organization, can be about leadership. Of course, the sun is a male planet. Hamas only has male leaders, as far as I know, and so Mercury stationing on the Sun-Saturn conjunction may have a big impact on how their leadership is organized. Maybe there'll be changes in leadership. Maybe, at worst for Hamas, maybe Israeli attacks on leadership, on their leadership, something like that. But Mercury will be highlighting that Sun-Saturn conjunction, and it may not be relevant or too relevant that Mercury is the planet of communication. It just may be that that Mercury is just simply pinpointing that Sun-Saturn conjunction. That Sun in Sagittarius is already under pressure from being close to Saturn, and so Mercury may really highlight that. And is it going to be positive or negative? I would suspect, because the Sun is conjunct Saturn, I would have said it's going to be more negative than positive. But yeah, so look out for any sort of changes in Hamas, especially in terms of their leadership. Okay, so those are two charts, Taylor Swift and Hamas. I know they're very different charts, very different. One's a person, one's an organization. But I think they might be affected by Mercury. Now, as far as Mars is concerned, so Mars is moving into Capricorn. So let's have a look and see if anyone might be impacted by this. So here's the chart of Emmanuel Macron, the president of France. He has a Sun-Mercury conjunction in the last degree of Sagittarius. Now, it being a French chart, the French are quite good on birth times. We know he was born at 10:40 a.m. So Mercury was just about to go into Capricorn, but it didn't quite make it when he was born. And so he's got Mars conjunct, just before Mars moves into Capricorn, it moves onto his Sun-Mercury conjunction. And so Emmanuel Macron has Sun-Mercury conjunction in Sagittarius, but also conjunct the solstice point, even though it's not actually in Capricorn. It's sort of square the Aries point. So in other words, he's got a Sun-Mercury conjunction square the Aries point. So this is someone who communicates world at large, to the world at large. Sagittarius, remember when we looked at Hamas, the Hamas chart is very ideological, really believes it's right. Same with Emmanuel Macron. He really believes he's right. He doesn't have any personal planets in air, and his Mercury is combust. It's right. It's conjunct the Sun. it's combust. It's not quite Casimir, so it's conjunct the Sun, and he's got Mars on that. So Emmanuel Macron he's going to get annoyed about something, and that might be, we might see this in terms of how he communicates. I don't know what is going to, I don't know what exactly he's going to say, but I don't want to completely exaggerate its importance, because Mars is a fast-moving planet. It moves every 2 years. It takes 2 years to move around. So this conjunction will happen every 2 years. But if you look at Macron's chart, he's got Jupiter opposition the Sun Mercury conjunction. So Mars is, as soon as it goes into Capricorn, it will be on his Sun Jupiter, Mercury Jupiter midpoint. So he's got lots to say. He's got lots to get angry about. So perhaps we should see what Macron is doing as Mars moves into Capricorn. Now, someone else to consider might be Candace Owens. She's the sort of right wing. I don't know how you describe her. She's all over YouTube. She had this big argument with Ben Shapiro, didn't she, about Israel? And I don't know what the state of that argument is. But notice how she has got Mars at 0 degrees Cancer. She's got Uranus at 5 degrees Capricorn. So she's got a Mars-Uranus opposition. So Candace Owen, with that Mars-Uranus opposition, she is certainly not afraid of controversy. She's not afraid of getting into fights and arguments. That's a very combative combination, Mars opposition Uranus. And then, so Mars comes along, moves into Capricorn, goes opposition her Mars, and then a few days later it's on her Mars-Uranus midpoint. So I guess over the next week she's probably going to be in the mood for a big argument. She does have to watch how she goes, because with Mars-Uranus can be associated with accidents, so she needs to be a bit careful. If she's, I don't know, she mustn't do anything dangerous if she's out driving or whatever, falling downstairs, that kind of thing. So she needs to look after herself. But we shouldn't forget that Mars is a fast-moving planet, so Mars will be opposition her Mars for a relatively short period of time. Then we have the Russian foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov. We don't know whether he's a Pisces or an Aries, because he was. We don't have a time of birth. He's either a Pisces or an Aries. Born March 21st, 1950. I've taken it for noon in Moscow. It's generally said that he is a very effective foreign minister. But he might have to be a bit careful this week as Mars goes into Capricorn, because he's got Sun possibly in Aries, maybe in Pisces, but square, all things being equal, probably in Aries, because at noon it's in Aries. But he's got Sun in Aries, possibly square Uranus. So here is a man who perhaps often gets involved in controversy, fights, the whole, I suppose, the whole thing with the, Russia's war against the United States, and it's that's going on when the United States is proxy, Ukraine, this whole thing that Lavrov is getting involved in. This is a very Uranus thing, and there's a lot of negotiation to do. Of course, sorry, I shouldn't have said it's not really Russia's war just against the United States. I mean, I suppose it's the whole of NATO, with poor Ukraine as NATO's I don't know, NATO's proxy, having to take all the damage. So that's what he's getting involved in anyway. And then so Mars comes along. Mars squares his Sun and opposition his Uranus. So something might come up for Lavrov. Now, it might be individual, might be personal. I don't know. As I was saying with Candace Owens, he you have to be careful, make sure you don't have an accident. I mean, he's not a young man. He's going to be 74 next birthday, so he does have to watch how he goes. He must be having an exhausting schedule. So he does need to look after himself. But at the same time, he could be involved in some really heavy, heated negotiations. We don't know. Maybe, we don't know if the United States and Russia are negotiating. We don't know what's going on between them. We'll probably never know, but that's something that might be going on for Sergei Lavrov. And finally, there's our favourite Canadian politician, Justin Trudeau. So there's Justin Trudeau's chart. He's just had his birthday, December the 25th. We do have a time of birth for him. So we can see that Justin Trudeau's Mars is at 2935 Pisces, and it is opposition Pluto. So it's not more than that. In fact, he's got his Sun in Capricorn, square Pluto. He's got a T-square here. So Sun, Mars, Pluto, T-square there. That's quite a powerful combination. So Sun square Pluto. I mean, he's into power. I mean, I know that Justin Trudeau sort of I suppose the image of this sort of nice progressive man who wants the best for everyone, but that's a pretty power-hungry combination there, that T-square. And so Mars is rolling over it. Mars is going to be conjunct his Mars. He's got Mars. Forget that. So as just before Mars moves into Capricorn, it squares his natal Mars. Then moment it goes into Capricorn, it will conjunct his Sun and will square his Pluto. So that Mars in Capricorn, as it moves last degree of Sagittarius, first few degrees of Capricorn, it does activate this T-square. And yes, this kind of thing, in fact, not just 2 years, in fact, arguably every 6 months you get this kind of thing. But still, Justin Trudeau is Prime Minister of Canada at a very tense time. Canada is really, for going back to Ukraine, Canada really is, for some reason, is seriously involved in it, wants to be seriously involved in it. So Mars is hitting Mars is hitting his T-square. I don't know. So it may be the next few days, next week, may be quite difficult for him. There may be things that he has to deal with. Maybe they're the same kind of things that Sergei Lavrov has to deal with. Anyway, he's another politician who we should be watching over the next week, because I think this movement of Mars into Capricorn could have an influence. Okay, so that's the astrology, and so what I want to do now is turn to the I Ching. So, as I said in the introduction, if you don't want to know about this week from the I Ching perspective, you can stop. You don't have to watch anymore. Just as I said, I will not be offended if you stop watching this video. Okay, so in terms of the I Ching, my approach is going to be, I'm going to look at the I Ching from a general perspective. Then I'm going to look at it from the perspective of money, then business and career, and finally in terms of relationships. So what I did was I asked the question, what is this week starting on, January the 1st, Monday, January the 1st, 2024, going to be like for those watching this video, indeed for those watching this section of a video where I talk about the I Ching. So the first hexagram I got is hexagram 57, which is the gentle. It is composed of a double trigram. So a trigram, remember, a hexagram has 6 lines, a trigram has 3 lines. So we can see that we've got 2 sets of 3 lines. And those trigrams are related to the wind. And the gentle is about, it can be about trying to understand something, trying to get to the root of something. So we get the image of a structure and wind blowing all the way through this structure, trying to really get to grips with it, trying to understand what it's all about. And it can actually be quite a sinister aspect to that, because it can be about trying to understand the evil behind something. You're trying to get to the root of the problem, and that's what it's about. But it can also be about trying to gain influence over someone or something. But again, you get this image of a wind blowing, trying to get through all the nooks and crannies, trying to understand the situation. And there are 2 moving lines. The 5th line, the 5th line being the 5th line from the bottom, and the top line. So these top 2 lines move. Now, the 5th line in a hexagram is usually fortunate, tends to be fortunate. And this can indicate for us that there might be a new direction. We start to understand something, we get the full picture, and having understood it, we're able to make decisions. And that's certainly fortunate. Certainly fortunate. There's a new point of departure for us, armed with knowledge. But it is actually possible to have too much knowledge, and that relates to the 6th line. If we ask too many questions, we might start to find things out that we don't need to know about, don't want to know about, and we might actually change the situation by asking those questions. Everyone, all of us have that heart of darkness that we don't really, we don't want to express. All of us, me, of course. All of us have it, and we don't talk about it. I mean, it's really nasty. We all have that nastiness, but we don't usually publicize it. And if you ask enough questions, if you dig deep enough, you may actually start to see the darkness in the people around you. And that's probably not something you should see. But when you do see it, it might change everything. And you might it might destroy the very thing you're trying to understand. And it's not just about people, it's about any situation. And I suppose if you ask too many questions, if you're considering, for example, a course of action, and you just keep going, you keep asking questions about it, you're always going to find that there's something wrong, there's something rotten there. And that might mean that you actually can't ever get anything done. So there is a limit to how many questions you should ask. At least that's my understanding of it. But because we've got two moving lines, this does move. And this hexagram, it does move to hexagram 46, pushing upwards. Now, 46, it's a fortunate hexagram. It relates to progress, getting attention, getting recognition. Okay, it's not saying we're going to achieve all of our goals, but we're certainly going to be helped along the way by people noticing what we're doing and making progress. So maybe it's really about not asking too many questions, knowing when to stop, just accepting the situation, and then we will eventually be able to make good progress, especially in a sort of a social sense. It's so that's how to deal with it. So I think the fact that 57 moves to 46, that we're able to get past this big problem of just asking too many questions, seeing the evil that is perhaps within everything. Well, I suppose that's a kind of quite Christian, Judeo-Christian concept. Maybe we're talking about original sin here. I don't know, but all of us are born in sin, and perhaps we need to understand, we need to accept that all of us are born in sin. And when we see the sin in other people, we shouldn't necessarily be too surprised or think too badly about them. Let he who, what does it say? Let he who is without sin cast the first stone, and all of that. Okay, so that's a general picture of the I Ching. So what I want to do now is look at the I Ching from the perspective of money. So, in a financial sense, I think this first week in January, and particularly the beginning of the week, we're in a situation where we are trying to understand something. We kind of know that things are not exactly right. And I think also we have to remember that at the beginning of the week, Venus is square Saturn, and Venus is it's not just about relationships. Venus can be about money. Venus square Saturn is about sort of financial concerns. And so we do have financial concerns. We kind of feel that maybe not everyone is being honest with us. We're not entirely convinced that our financial strategy is correct, and we want to understand it. And so what we should be doing is asking questions, working out what's going on. We need to be like the wind. We need to uncover things. We need to be ready to sort of read fine print. We need to do research, uncover things. And, there comes a point when we start to understand the whole picture, when it becomes clear what the problem is and how to deal with the problem. But then there's a question, should we push it too far? Should we do we really want to understand what's going on? I think in terms of dealing with other people, maybe it's enough to just know when to stop our inquiries. So, for example, if we start to realize that a financial scheme is bad or that something is wrong, that's enough. We know we know the answer. Then we can move on to something else. We don't have to keep asking. We don't have to keep going. I suppose it's like when those people call you up trying to find your bank details. These constant every day. There's someone on the phone. I don't know where they're calling from, trying to get you to give over your bank details or a PIN number or whatever. It's enough to know that they're out to rip you off. They're out to get your money. Once you know that, you can just hang up. What you don't perhaps want to do is keep going. Want to know, who is this person? Who is it? I really hate this person. I want to get at them. I want to know where they're working from and all that kind of stuff. You don't need to do that. But I suppose there's some of it, there might be a temptation to do that. But if you do that, you ask too many questions, maybe this person, I don't know, will have some way of getting you which they haven't, which you don't know about. Is it something like that? So maybe you just need to know, when to stop. And I think there can be, once you've got this moment of knowledge, which I think will happen at some stage in the week, that allows you to start to to act in a way to improve your financial situation. But you should do it in a positive way, not a negative way. You should do it not by moving through the last line of the gentle, really getting to the heart of darkness. You don't need to do that. You can just get into, because we should be able to move to the next hexagram, which is pushing upwards, which means, having worked it all out, we can make good progress in terms of reaching our financial goals. If there had been financial problems in the past, good progress in terms of sorting everything out, or perhaps cutting our losses. So I think by the end of the week, I think we can really set ourselves up nicely for the rest of 2004. So that's money. So now I want to talk about business and career. So again, we start with the gentle. Now, it may be appropriate to look at this hexagram in a different way, because there are different translations of the I Ching, and an alternative approach to this hexagram, which is put forward by Greg Winkup. He doesn't call it the gentle. He relates this hexagram to submission, and in terms of career, particularly if we're looking for a job or we're in a job but not running, if we're not the CEO or whatever, if we're an employee, submission can be quite important, because if we're an employee, we do have to submit to authority. That's part of the contract, isn't it? I mean, one gets paid a wage, but one's got to do it. Your employer has their way of doing it. So I think there is a need. It's not about one's ego. It's not about trying to show off. It's about accepting your position in the hierarchy, and when you hit the fifth line moves, that's when you start to make progress. You start to understand what's required of you. You perhaps start to understand what your employer requires of you. And it's perhaps the same even if you run your own business, because if you run your own business, you still need to satisfy. You're doing work for people. You're trying to get contracts, and again, there is a sense of submission, isn't there? Even if you're if you're a contractor, you have a client, and you need to keep your client happy, and that means to an extent submitting to what your client wants. So that is certainly a way of looking at it. So there comes a point where we understand what needs to be done, but there is a danger, that top line, and if you look at it in terms of submission, then the emphasis starts to change. It means that we go too far. We think, oh, I understand what's required. I'm going to go further, and I'm going to start. I'm so confident that I can actually maybe tell my employer how things should be. I can tell my client how things should be. I can start getting ideas that I can start controlling the situation. Not a good idea. Remember, submission. Even 57, the gentle. It's not a time to be trying to take control of things. That will not be appreciated. So all that work in understanding things could be ruined because you get ideas and you start to act above your station. But I'm assuming that we know when to stop here in terms of career, business. We understand what's needed to be done. We resist the temptation to start acting above our station, and then we can move to hexagram 46, pushing upwards. And in terms of career, business, this is about getting recognition from, for example, employers, clients, whatever, and by showing them respect, by showing a little bit of submission, and I don't mean submission in a bad way. By showing some respect, we get the advancement, and we get the advancement that we want, or we get the contract we want, and that's how it works out. So I think it's quite clear in terms of career and business what needs to be done this week. Finally, I want to look at the I Ching from the perspective of relationships. I suppose it does depend on what kind of relationship you're in, or what stage of a relationship you're in. I think if you're at the beginning of a new relationship, a lot of it is going to be about trying to understand the person you're dealing with, because I think hexagram 57, if we call it the gentle, the other person, that is the object of inquiry. You need to understand whether this person can be trusted. You need to get to know this person, and you have to ask yourself how much you want to know this person. You can get to know this person very well, but do you want to go all the way? Do you want to really get to know this person? Because if you really get to know this person, you might find out things about this person that you really are not comfortable with. And even then, you have to ask, is that what you want to do? I mean, you have to take people as whole people, and you have to deal with their evil. I mean that in the sense of, or if you like, maybe their original sin. You have to accept that. You have to accept people, and accept that if it's always the case. If you meet someone who is completely good, completely nice, completely honest, you can't see anything wrong with them, then that is a warning sign. So you do have to work out how far you want to go. So maybe you just need to, what you really need to do is you need to get to know someone just enough. You hit the fifth line where you come to a point where you actually understand what someone is like. Then you can make a decision about whether or not you want to proceed. If you want to proceed, you can move to hexagram 46, which is pushing upwards, the relationship developing, and so forth. As far as existing relationships are concerned, I think there may be an issue here. Maybe existing relationships, it's not all fine. I don't think. Things recently have not been perfect, and you need to kind of work out. You need to work out what's going on, and it's like the wind, rushing through the house, working everything out, and there comes a point where you start to see what's wrong, and you can start to see what needs to be done to change the situation. And of course, if you're dealing with someone who you've known for a long time, I don't know, for example, someone you've been married for a few decades to, then you've probably got a pretty good idea about the real darkness in that person. As I said, the kind of darkness that we all have. You've got a pretty good idea about that. So there's no need to push it. There's no need to push it right at the end, because even if you've known someone for a long time, there's still the danger here with the gentle that you push the wrong buttons, and then you see something you don't want to see, and that causes a lot of damage. And it's possibly not even necessary for you to see that. But so, ideally, you reach a point where you understand what needs to be done, and then you work it through. And I think with 46 pushing upwards, it means that if there have been any problems in an existing long-term relationship, then you can make good progress in terms of resolving the issue. Okay, so that's all I'm going to say for today. So that's all I'm going to say about this week. I think overall the week looks okay. The I Ching is kind of suggesting that the last part of the week is probably going to be better than the first part of the week. I suppose we shouldn't forget that the beginning of a week, there is that Venus-Saturn square, which I think could cast a bit of a shadow on the week. But, Monday, Tuesday could be a bit of a problem. But and yes, it's true that the moon is going through the Via Combusta, sort of. I think Thursday through to Saturday, off the top of my head, something like that. But the I Ching is saying, in the end, once we've resolved the various issues, I think we can make good progress, and whatever's bothering us, we can resolve it. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did enjoy the video, then I would be really grateful if you liked it. If you're not subscribed, I'd be very happy for you to subscribe. And if you want to buy me a coffee, there is a link in the description. Thanks again for listening, and I will talk to you again very soon, and Happy New Year.